The morning my mother stood in the middle of my front yard and told my neighbors I was wasting a house, she had no idea that same house had been watching her for 2 weeks. She had a whole speech ready. A moving truck parked at the curb. My brother already pulling furniture off the back. She stood on my grass like a woman collecting what was already hers. What she didn't know was that every door, every hallway, every angle had been recorded. And I had every second of it saved in 3 different places.
If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. My name is Simone Caldwell. I am 36 years old. I work in commercial construction management, not the kind of job people picture when they hear construction. I don't pour concrete. I run the people who do. Schedules, budgets, subcontractor coordination, code compliance across 2 counties. I have been doing this work since I was 23 years old, fresh out of a state university with a civil engineering degree and absolutely no one waiting at home to celebrate. I bought my house 4 years ago. 3 bedrooms, a wide front porch, a backyard with a wooden fence that needed replacing when I moved in, and doesn't anymore because I replaced it myself on a weekend in October. White brick, black trim, a neighborhood called Westfield Heights in a mid-sized city called Garrison. Population 40,000. The kind of city where everybody knows your business if you let them. My mortgage is in my name. My deed is in my name. I put down 40% in cash, money I saved from the time I was 22 years old, and promised myself I would never be financially dependent on anyone in my family. That last part matters. You'll understand why in a minute. I have one sibling, my brother, Derek. He's 4 years older than me, which growing up felt more like a generation. Derek got the car at 16. I got a bus pass. Derek got his first apartment deposit covered by our parents. When I graduated, my father said, "You're sharp, Simone. You'll handle it." And I did. That was apparently the problem. Derek's pattern went like this. Job to job, year to year, always someone else's fault. A boss who had it out for him. A system that didn't recognize what he brought. A partner who didn't support him the way he needed. He married a woman named Carla when he was 27. They had a son, Marcus, now 9, and a daughter, Nia, now 7. Sweet kids. Carla filed for divorce 2 years ago. She got primary custody. Derek got every other weekend and a mountain of resentment he distributed evenly among everyone except himself. My parents, Evelyn and Curtis Caldwell, blamed Carla. That's not how it was presented, of course. What they said was that Carla had given up on Derek, that marriage took patience, that women today didn't understand what commitment required. Nobody at the Thanksgiving table asked about the overdrafted accounts, the months of late rent, the afternoons Derek spent in bed while Carla worked double shifts. Those details didn't fit the story my parents had been telling themselves since Derek was old enough to disappoint them gently and recover quickly. I loved my brother. Present tense. But I stopped being surprised by him a long time ago. The call came on a Thursday evening in late September. I was in my kitchen sanding down a cabinet door, the kind of small weekend project that I'd been putting off for 3 months and finally got to. My phone lit up on the counter. Mom. I set down the sandpaper. She opened with small talk, which I knew immediately meant she was building to something. How was work? Had I eaten dinner? Was I getting enough sleep? My mother is not a woman who asks about sleep unless she needs something. I waited. Derek needs a place. She said it the way people say a thing they've already decided. Not a request, a delivery. He's been staying with us since Carla's lawyer finalized everything. Your father's back is giving him trouble on the pull-out sofa. Derek needs his own space. I already knew where this was going. I had known for months that it was coming. I just didn't know exactly how she was going to frame it. Your house has 3 bedrooms, Simone. You're there by yourself. I put the sanded cabinet door down slowly and leaned against the counter. No. Silence. 1 beat, 2. He has children. Marcus and Nia need a place to sleep when they visit him. They have a home, Mom. They live with Carla. They need to be near their father. You have the space. It's just sitting there. It's just sitting there. as if the room I used as a home office, the space where I had built a life that I worked every day to maintain, was sitting around idle, waiting to be redistributed. I'm not giving my brother my house. Nobody's asking you to give it away. We're asking you to share. You're asking me to let a grown man move into my home without my agreement, and the answer is no. My father got on the line then. His voice does this thing when he's decided a conversation is over. Lower, flatter, like a door closing quietly. Simone, family helps family. You have more than you need. Your brother needs help. This is not a complicated situation. I close my eyes. The answer is still no, Dad. He hung up first. My mother followed a second later without a goodbye. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that, listening to the quiet that I had paid for, that I had earned. Then I went back to sanding the cabinet door. A week passed and my parents went silent. If you've grown up in a family like mine, you already know that silence from people like this is not peace. It's preparation. I told myself I was overthinking. I went to work. I ran my site reviews. I ate lunch at my desk on Tuesdays and Thursdays and went home to a quiet house and a half-finished cabinet door and pretended the low hum in my stomach was just the week catching up with me. I have a security system. 2 outdoor cameras, 1 interior camera in the main hallway mounted near the ceiling, motion sensors on every exterior door. I had it installed 8 months after I moved in, back when a string of car break-ins happened on my block. I never really thought about it much after that. It just ran. It just watched. On a Wednesday afternoon, I was sitting through a project debrief 15 miles away when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. Front door. Person detected. I was in the middle of reviewing drainage specs with a contractor who charged $400 an hour. I couldn't check it then. I checked it in the parking lot after the meeting. Engine running, heat on low against the October chill. The timestamp read 12:47 in the afternoon. Derek was standing on my front porch. He looked left, looked right, checked behind him the way people do when they know they're somewhere they shouldn't be. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a key. Not his key, my spare key. The one I had given my parents 2 years before in case of emergency, in case something happened to me. He put it in the lock. He walked into my house. The interior hallway camera caught what happened next. Derek moved through every room, phone out, recording. He opened closet doors. He checked the bathroom faucets. He stood in the doorway of the larger spare bedroom for nearly 2 minutes, holding up his phone and panning the space slowly. Taking stock, taking inventory. The footage was 12 minutes long and every second of it was clear and time-stamped. I sat in that parking lot with my hands tight on the steering wheel, watching my brother walk through my home like he was comparing square footage. I called him. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. I sat there for a few minutes, replaying the footage on my phone, watching the moment he tested the key, watching the moment he stepped through my front door with the absolute ease of a man who had already been given permission by someone who had no right to give it. That night, I called my mother. "Did you give Derek my spare key?" A pause that told me everything before she said a word. He just wanted to see if the space would work for the children. "You gave him access to my home without asking me." "Simone, don't be dramatic. He looked around. He didn't touch anything." My father, somewhere in the background. "Let the man see the house, for heaven's sake." I was quiet for a moment. Then, he walked through every room with his phone recording. That wasn't a visit. That was a walkthrough. "We're trying to solve a problem." "You don't have a problem. I have a problem, and you've made it worse. Do not give anyone access to my home again without my permission." My mother's voice went soft then, that careful softness that means she's recalibrating. "Sweetheart, we weren't trying to upset you. We just want what's best for the family." I hung up. I didn't change the locks that night. Part of me wanted to. But another part of me, the part that has been managing complex projects with unpredictable variables for over a decade, wanted to see how far they were willing to go before I showed them that I had been watching. I did not have to wait long. 8 days later, I was on a job site overseeing a concrete pour when my phone buzzed again. Motion alert. Front door. I stepped away from the crew and opened the live feed. My mother, my father, and my brother were all three standing on my front porch. My father had the spare key out. He unlocked the door. Derek followed him inside, carrying a plastic bag from a hardware store. My mother stood on the porch for a moment, looking up and down the street, then stepped inside and pulled the door closed behind her. I stood on a job site in work boots and a hard hat, watching my family walk into my home like they owned it. The hallway camera caught Derek kneeling at the front door with a screwdriver. He had a new deadbolt and knob set in the packaging. He was removing my lock. My father stood over him, arms crossed, watching, the posture of a man supervising a project he approved. My mother moved through the house carrying a cardboard box. She went to the larger spare bedroom and began arranging things on the floor near the closet. A stuffed rabbit, a folded blanket with stars on it, a pair of small rain boots in yellow. They were decorating a room in my house, building a life inside mine without asking me. I took screenshots of every frame. I saved every clip. My hands were shaking, but my thinking was completely clear. I have been on job sites where things go wrong in ways that cost real money. I have managed contractors who lie to my face and smile while doing it. I have learned that when something is going wrong, you document it before you address it. You do not react first. You gather everything, and then you act from a position of evidence. I had 14 minutes of footage with their faces visible, their actions clear, and every second time-stamped. I drove home that evening, and as I pulled into my driveway, my neighbor Carolyn was outside pruning the rose bushes along her front fence. She has lived next door to me since I moved in. She is 64 years old, retired, keeps an immaculate garden, and has the particular sharpness of a woman who has navigated a lot of life on her own terms. She looked at me when I climbed out of my truck and said nothing for a moment. "Simone, you all right?" I showed her the footage right there in the driveway. She watched the whole thing without speaking. Then she handed my phone back and looked at me over her reading glasses. That's unauthorized entry and change of locks. In this state, that's a misdemeanor at minimum, possibly more depending on intent. They used a key you gave them for emergencies and decided that counted as permanent access. She paused. It does not. They're my family, Carolyn. That's their business. This is your house. Those aren't the same thing. She kept her voice even and steady. Here's what you do tonight. Back up that footage, multiple places, cloud storage, a physical drive, somewhere they cannot reach. Then call a locksmith. Get every lock changed before the sun comes up tomorrow. And if they come back, she looked at me. You call the police and you file a formal trespass warning. A trespass warning. Against my own parents. They don't have a legal claim to that property, Carolyn said. Not a lease, not a deed, not a written agreement. They entered without your current consent and they changed your locks. What they did is not a family matter. It's a property matter, and you have the evidence. I went inside and called a locksmith. He came within the hour. He saw the replacement hardware Derek had installed, still shiny and new, and just nodded without asking questions. Front door, back door, garage entry. New deadbolts, new handles, new keys in 3 sets, all mine. I found the box my mother had placed in the spare bedroom, the stuffed rabbit, the star blanket, the yellow rain boots. I carried everything carefully to my garage and set it on the workbench. I was not angry at Marcus and Nia. These were their things. I put them somewhere safe and left them there. Then I added a second exterior camera covering the back entry and checked every feed from my phone. Sat on my front porch in the dark with a cup of tea and turned up the audio on that last clip, the one near the end of the Thursday footage, where my mother was standing in my hallway before she left. I had to press the phone against my ear to hear it, but I heard it. She was talking to Derek, voice low, almost casual. "She'll come around. She always does." I set my phone face down on the porch railing. Not this time. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 6:45. The family group chat, the one my mother created years ago that nobody leaves because leaving it is considered an act of war. My mother had posted a message. She asked for prayers for the family, said that Derek and his children were in need and that someone close to them had chosen selfishness over love, that she had asked with love and been turned away, that it broke her heart. 15 people in that chat. Aunts, uncles, my cousin Renee, a great aunt, people who send holiday cards and show up at funerals. The replies came in quickly. My Aunt Gloria, "Praying for you, Evelyn. Family should be there for each other." My Uncle Raymond, "Derek's been through enough. This is a shame." My cousin Renee sent me a private message. "Hey, what's going on? Your mom sounds really upset." I read every message. I saved every screenshot. Then Derek texted me directly. "It's just a house, Simone. I have kids." Just a house. 4 years of mortgage payments. Every weekend I spent refinishing the floors myself, replacing the fence, retiling the kitchen backsplash with my own hands, building something mine from the ground up. Just a house. I put my phone down and made coffee. That afternoon, one more post in the group chat from my mother. "We are coming Saturday with the moving truck. This is what is happening. Derek and his children deserve stability, and we are providing it." I read it twice. Then I set down my mug, locked my phone, and drove home. They were actually going to show up with a truck, and they expected me to step back and let it happen, the way I had been stepping back my whole life, adjusting, absorbing, getting over it. They did not understand who they were dealing with anymore. That Friday, I went over to Carolyn's. She had coffee already made, 2 mugs on the counter. We sat on her screened porch while the evening settled around us. I told her about the group chat message, about the moving truck coming in the morning. She stirred her coffee slowly and let the quiet sit for a moment. "My sister tried to take my mother's house after she passed," she said finally. 1997. I had to involve a lawyer and eventually a judge. But the hardest part wasn't any of that. What was the hardest part? Realizing she never saw me as family. She saw me as something standing between her and something she wanted. She looked at me steadily. "That's what you're dealing with, Simone. They love you, but they do not see you." I thought about that the whole drive home. I backed the footage to 2 cloud accounts and copied it to a USB drive. I put in my desk drawer. I set my alarm for 7 in the morning. I put my deed, my ID, and my mortgage statement on the kitchen counter in a folder so I wouldn't have to search for them. Then I sat on my porch until the streetlights came on. They arrived at 8:52. I heard the truck before I saw it. The low grinding rumble of a large engine turning onto my street, then the sound of air brakes. A box truck, the mid-size kind, backed up to the curb in front of my house. Derek was driving. Behind it, my father's silver SUV. My mother in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, purse in her lap, dressed like she was coming from church. I was already on my porch, coffee in my hand, sitting in the chair I had sanded and repainted myself 2 summers ago. I did not move. Derek climbed down from the truck cab and rolled up the back gate. Inside, a bed frame. Boxes stacked high, a child's bicycle with training wheels, a lamp with the shade still on, bags and bins, and the assorted contents of a life being relocated, whether the owner of the destination agreed to it or not. My father got out of the SUV. He stretched his back, looked at the house, and walked toward the porch with the posture of a man who is accustomed to being the final word. "Simone, let's not make this into something it doesn't have to be." Down the street, Carolyn had come out with her garden shears. She wasn't pruning anything. She was watching. Across the street, my neighbor Brenda was checking her mailbox and had gone very still. The couple 2 doors down, the Nguyens, had paused loading their children into a minivan. My mother stepped out of the SUV. She walked past my father, past the front path, and stopped in the center of my yard. My yard. And she used the voice she uses when she wants to be overheard. Simone, this has gone on long enough. Your brother has children. You are living here alone. This is not fair, and you know it. You need to stop being selfish." The word moved through me and settled. Selfish. As if purchasing a home with my own money and choosing who lived in it was selfishness. As if what I had built here was something owed to someone else the moment it exceeded my immediate needs. Mrs. Brenda across the street set her mail down and stood still. I set my coffee mug on the railing and stood up. I came down the porch steps slowly. 3 steps, no hurry. I stopped on the walkway about 6 feet from my parents, close enough to speak without raising my voice, close enough for the neighbors to hear everything clearly. "This is my house." My voice was steady. I had not rehearsed a word of it. "I bought it with my own money. My name is on the deed, and every mortgage payment comes from my account alone. Not one person in this family has contributed a single dollar to this property." My father's jaw tightened. "Don't you disrespect us. We are your parents." Respect works in both directions. You came to my home with a moving truck without my consent. That is not love. That is not family. That is trespassing. Derek stepped forward. "Simone, come on. Don't do this." "Do what? Enforce the legal ownership of my own home?" He opened his mouth and then closed it. He was not used to this version of me. None of them were. For 36 years, I had been the one who absorbed everything, who adjusted, who went quiet when things got loud, who got over it so they didn't have to feel guilty about what it cost me. That version of me had left the building. My mother clasped her hands in front of her chest and turned toward Brenda's porch like she was addressing an audience. "I am sorry you have to witness this. My daughter has chosen herself over her brother's children. We are only here to help. This is what we get for trying to keep this family together." My father reached into his pocket and walked up the front path to the door. He pulled out the spare key, the one I had given them for emergencies 2 years ago. He put it in the lock and turned it. Nothing. He tried again. Nothing. Derek jogged up behind him with his own key. The one that matched the new lock he had installed himself 8 days ago while my father supervised. He tried it. It did not fit. My father turned and looked at me. "Simone, you changed the locks?" "I changed them back after Derek changed them last Thursday while I was at work." The air on that street went absolutely still. Derek lowered his hand. He stared at the door like it had personally failed him. My father's face cycled through confusion, then recognition, then something that looked like a man calculating how far gone the situation already was. My mother, still on the lawn. "What are you talking about? What do you mean last Thursday?" "Thursday afternoon, all 3 of you let yourselves into my house with the key I gave you for emergencies. Derek replaced my deadbolt while Dad watched. You brought a box of children's belongings and arranged them in my spare bedroom. I was at a job site 15 miles away. Nobody asked me. Nobody called me. You had already decided." I paused. "It's on camera." 3 words. The color left my father's face like water draining. Carolyn's voice from her driveway, calm and clear. "I'd move off that porch, Curtis." Nobody moved for what felt like a long time. A few dead leaves scraped across the concrete walkway. The Nguyens had not gotten into their minivan. Brenda had not gone back inside. 2 more neighbors I recognized from the block had come out. My father squared his shoulders. "You would call the police on your own family. I'm going to call the police on 3 people trespassing on my property." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. My thumb was steady. When the dispatcher answered, I gave my address, told her 3 individuals were on my property with a moving truck and were refusing to leave after being asked. I kept my voice clear and even. My mother started crying, not small tears. Full, audible, shoulders-shaking grief turned outward toward every neighbor within earshot. She put her hands over her face and wailed loud enough for the whole block to hear. "How can you do this? We raised you. We gave you your life. This is what we get. Derek kicked the bottom porch step with his boot. She's lost her mind. My father said nothing. He stood by the SUV with his arms crossed and his jaw working, doing the math. Camera footage, changed locks, evidence, a 911 call already in progress. Whatever position he had arrived with was dissolving in real time, and he knew it. Carolyn walked to the low fence between our yards and looked at me directly. "I saw everything, Simone." She said it at normal conversational volume, which, in the quiet of that street, everyone heard. "I will give a statement to the officers when they arrive." My mother's head snapped toward her. For just a moment, one unguarded moment, the tears stopped, and I saw what was underneath them. Not grief, fury. Then the sob returned, louder. The police cruiser arrived 12 minutes after my call. 2 officers. The first one out was a woman, Officer Tarrant according to her badge, who took in the entire scene in one measured sweep before she reached me on the walkway. "Who made the call?" "I did. I'm the homeowner." I handed her my driver's license and the deed copy I had in my jacket pocket. She read both carefully. "You're the sole owner of this property?" "Yes." She walked to my father. "Sir, the homeowner has asked you to leave. You need to go." My father drew himself up. "Officer, this is a family matter. We're trying to find housing for my son and his children. His sister has more space than she needs." "Sir, that isn't relevant to property law. The owner has asked you to leave." Derek stepped forward. "She's my sister. I just need a place. That doesn't give you a right to be on this property if she's asking you to go." My mother stood up from the porch step where she had collapsed and pointed at me, voice raised for the audience. "She agreed to this weeks ago. She told us she would help. She is lying. She invited us here." Officer Tarrant turned to me. "Ma'am, do you have anything to add?" I unlocked my phone. The Thursday footage was already cued. I handed it to her. "This was recorded at my property 8 days ago. I was at work. I never gave permission for anyone to enter." She pressed play. I watched her eyes move across the screen. My father opening the front door. Derek on one knee with a screwdriver and a fresh lock set still in the packaging. My mother walking the hallway with a cardboard box. 14 minutes. Every face visible. Every action clear. Every second time-stamped. The second officer leaned in to watch. Neither of them spoke until it finished. Officer Tarrant looked up at my father. Her voice had changed, not loud, precise. "Sir, this footage shows you and 2 other individuals entering this property without the owner's consent and replacing her door locks. That constitutes unauthorized entry and potentially criminal trespass." My father said nothing. Derek took 2 steps backward and walked into the truck. My mother made no sound. For the first time in any memory I had of her, Evelyn Caldwell had absolutely nothing to say. Carolyn spoke from her position near the fence. "I'll provide a witness statement. I can confirm that the homeowner never agreed to any of this. Mrs. Caldwell told me last week personally that Simone had consented to the arrangement." That was false. The second officer had a notepad out. Officer Tarrant turned to my family. "All 3 of you need to leave the property now. Take the truck." Derek moved first. He rolled the gate of the box truck down, walked around to the cab, climbed in, and started the engine without looking at me. He kept his eyes on the windshield the whole time, like a man trying to make himself invisible. My mother walked to the SUV on rigid legs, got in and pulled the door shut behind her with enough force to rock the whole vehicle. My father was last. He stood on my front walkway and looked at me for a long moment. I have known that face my whole life. The hard, flat expression of a man who does not lose. Except he was losing. He had already lost. He turned and walked to the driver's side, got in, and backed out slowly. I turned to Officer Tarrant. "I'd like to file a formal trespass warning." She nodded. "We'll document today and the footage from last Thursday. You'll have a copy for your records. If any of them return without your explicit permission, we pursue charges." She handed me her card. The street went quiet. Carolyn walked over and stood beside me without saying anything for a moment. Then, "You held that together." I thanked her. I went inside, locked every lock, walked to the living room, and sat down on the floor in front of the couch. And I cried. Not because I had lost my family. I cried because I finally understood clearly that I had not lost them today. I had just stopped pretending not to see what they had always been. The next morning was Sunday, my father's birthday party, a gathering at the church fellowship hall that had been planned for a month. I lay awake from 4 a.m. running the same calculation over and over. If I didn't go, my mother would stand in front of 40 people and deliver her version unchallenged. She would describe a daughter who called the police on her own parents, who turned away her brother's children, who chose an empty house over family. She would leave out the footage. She would leave out the locks. She would leave out the spare key and the moving truck and the 14 minutes of Thursday afternoon she spent arranging a child's toys in a room that did not belong to her. In a city like Garrison, the first story people hear tends to be the one they hold. I got dressed. Dark blouse, pressed slacks, my good heels, professional. Not because I was performing strength, because I was not going to walk into that room looking like someone who had been broken by the previous 24 hours and give my mother something to point to. I put the deed copy and my phone in my bag, charged to 94%, footage loaded. Carolyn texted at 7:30. "You don't have to go," I wrote back. "I know. That's exactly why I'm going." The fellowship hall was 15 minutes away. Cinder block walls painted cream, fluorescent lights, paper tablecloths, a banner reading "Happy Birthday Curtis" in blue and gold, sheet cake from the bakery on Highland, 40 or so people. Family, church members, neighbors. My entire social world compressed into one room. I felt the temperature the moment I walked through the door, the practiced cool of a room full of people who've already been told something about you and have already decided how to hold their faces when you walk in. My Aunt Gloria turned her back when she saw me. My Uncle Raymond gave me the kind of nod you give a stranger you have no reason to be rude to. My cousin Renee started toward me, then stopped when she caught her mother's expression and looked down at her plate. My mother was at the head table with Derek. She wore a pale blazer and the gold earrings she saves for occasions where she wants to be remembered as dignified. Derek sat beside her with Nia on his lap and Marcus beside him, coloring a paper placemat, a portrait of a devoted father wronged by the world. Pastor Hammond came to shake my hand. He is a kind man. His handshake was warm. His eyes were careful. He said he was glad I could make it. Not glad to see me. Glad I could make it. Like my presence was a concession and not a given. I sat at a table near the back wall and waited. After the welcome prayer, my mother stood up. She had a folded index card in her hand, but I doubted she needed it. Donna Townsend knew how to work a room. She had been doing it her entire adult life. She thanked everyone for celebrating Curtis, spoke about their years of marriage, their commitment to family, the sacrifices they had made. Her voice was warm and steady. Then it softened. "This year has tested us," she said. "We raised our children to know that family comes before everything, that when your own needs are met, you look to the people beside you." A breath. "We are still learning that some lessons do not take." She looked directly at me. Every head in the room turned. I sat still. Hands flat on the table. Face composed. "When your child calls the police on you," her voice cracked beautifully on cue, "when she chooses an empty house over her brother's children who have nowhere to go, you ask yourself where you went wrong." She pressed a hand to her chest. "I am still asking." The murmur moved through the room. Aunt Gloria pressed a napkin to her eyes. Uncle Raymond shook his head slowly. A woman from the choir put her hand to her mouth. My mother sat down. My father took her hand. The room settled its verdict on me. And that is when I stood up. The chair scraped back sharp against the tile. 40 heads turned. I walked to the center of the room, not to the front table, to the middle, where I could be seen from everywhere. "Happy birthday, Dad." I meant it. "I love you." Then, "But everyone here deserves to hear the complete story, because what you just heard was only part of it." My mother's hand went to my father's arm. Her grip, I could see from where I stood, was tight. "I purchased my home 4 years ago with my own money, my own savings, my own mortgage. No one in this family contributed a single dollar." I unzipped my bag and held up the deed copy. "This is the deed. My name, sole owner." The room was quiet in a way that had nothing to do with politeness. 8 days ago, while I was at my job, my parents and my brother let themselves into my house with an emergency key I gave them 2 years ago. Derek changed my door locks. My father supervised. My mother brought a box of children's belongings and arranged them in my spare bedroom. I was not asked. I did not agree. I was not even told. I opened my phone. I had already scoped the AV setup when I arrived. The church used a mounted television for Sunday school presentations. I walked to the cart in the corner, cast my phone to the screen, and pressed play. The room watched my father open my front door, watched Derek kneel at the threshold with a screwdriver, watched my mother carry a cardboard box down my hallway and disappear into the spare room. 14 minutes. Date. Time. Every face clear. Aunt Gloria put her lemonade down slowly. Uncle Raymond's mouth opened. Pastor Hammond stood very still, watching the screen. When the footage ended, my mother said, "You're twisting this. You're making it look like something it isn't." "The camera doesn't twist anything, Mom." The silence after those words was the loudest thing in that room. Carolyn had come with me, had slipped in quietly and taken a seat near the door when I arrived. I had not announced her. She stood now. I was present yesterday when the officers came. I provided a witness statement. Gerald, Evelyn, and Derek arrived at Simone's home with a moving truck intending to move Derek in without Simone's knowledge or consent. She paused. "Evelyn, you told me directly on the sidewalk last week that Simone had agreed to all of this. That was not true." The room shifted. I could feel it. The way you feel a current change direction before you see it. Aunt Gloria turned toward my mother slowly. "Evelyn, you told me Simone had agreed." My mother pressed her lips together. "You told me she was happy about it." Aunt Gloria continued, her voice rising. "I sent that child a message, a terrible message, because you told me she had already said yes and was just making trouble." Derek stood up. He picked up Nia, took Marcus by the hand, and walked out the side door without looking at anyone. He did not look at me. My father had not spoken a single word. He sat in his folding chair looking at the paper plate in front of him, the sheet cake behind him still uncut. Pastor Hammond turned away from the television screen. He is not a man who raises his voice. He did not raise it now. He looked at my father and said quietly, "Curtis, is this true?" My father said nothing. The party did not end with singing. It ended with people standing carefully, collecting their things, and leaving. No long goodbyes. The sheet cake sat on the table whole and untouched. Someone dimmed the overhead lights. Pastor Hammond walked my parents to the parking lot. I do not know what he said to them. The week that followed had the quiet of a room after something has been broken in it. Not peaceful, just emptied of the noise. Monday, I went to the Garrison Police Department and filed the formal trespass warning. Officer Tarrant processed the paperwork. My parents' names and Derek's were entered into the public record. In a city of 40,000, that kind of document does not stay private long. Tuesday, Pastor Hammond called my parents for a private meeting at the church. I was not there and was not told what was said. But the following Sunday, I heard through Carolyn that my parents had moved from their usual front row seats to the back of the sanctuary. That told me what I needed to know. Wednesday, Aunt Gloria called me. She cried for the first several minutes. Then she said, "I should have called you directly before I believed anything. "I'm sorry, Simone." I told her I appreciated that. I did not tell her it was okay. It was not okay yet. Okay is something that has to be earned back. Thursday, Derek submitted a housing application through the County Affordable Housing Program. He qualified. According to what filtered back to me through Renee, it was the first time in his adult life he had filled out his own paperwork without someone doing it for him. Friday, my mother texted me. 4 paragraphs. I read every word. She did not apologize. She wrote that I had humiliated her husband on his birthday in front of their community, in front of their church, and that she hoped I was satisfied with myself. I locked my phone without responding. "No, Mom, you humiliated yourselves. I just made sure everyone had the same information." 2 weeks after that, my father called on a Tuesday evening. I almost didn't answer. I answered. He cleared his throat twice before speaking. His voice was quieter than I had heard it in years, like a man who had not been sleeping well. "I'm not calling to apologize. I don't know how to do that yet." I leaned against my kitchen counter and waited. "I thought if Derek had a real place," he said slowly, "a place of his own with space for the kids, he would finally get himself together. I kept watching him on that couch every night and thinking that what he needed was stability. And the easiest path to that was your house." A long pause. "You had 3 bedrooms? You were there alone." "I earned those 3 bedrooms, Dad." Silence. "I know that." Another pause. Longer. I could hear the television in the background, the low sound of an evening newscast, the sounds of my parents' living room, the place where I had spent my whole childhood being the one who was fine, the one who didn't need anything, the one who would figure it out. "I thought I was thinking about your brother. I wasn't thinking about you." "You never thought it was strange that I never asked you for anything? In 36 years? He breathed. "I thought it meant you were fine." "It meant I learned not to ask." Another long silence. The news anchor said something about weather, a low rumble of a commercial break. "I know," my father said finally. "I think I always knew." He did not say more than that, neither did I. We stayed on the line for another few minutes, not quite talking, not quite done. Then he said goodnight, and I said goodnight, and we hung up. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that. There is a difference between your father understanding something and your father being changed by it. I did not know yet which one that call was. I was not going to extend credit for things not yet done, but I saved the call in my recent history before I put the phone down, just in case I needed to remember the exact sound of a man beginning to reckon with himself. Update. 3 months later. It is January now. A Sunday afternoon, the kind where the light comes in low and pale through the kitchen window and the whole house feels settled and quiet. I made a full breakfast this morning and ate it at my own table. I read the news. I did not check the family group chat, which has been largely silent since the birthday party. I did not rehearse conversations in my head. I just ate my eggs and drank my coffee and let the morning be what it was. Derek moved into his studio apartment in November, 600 square feet, his name on the lease, his bank account tied to the rent, nobody co-signing. Renee told me he picked up a position with a property maintenance company. Steady hours, Monday through Friday. 3 months without missing a day. His supervisor apparently mentioned him by name to someone at the hardware store on Franklin. Word travels in Garrison. It got back to me. Heather started letting him have Marcus and Nia on Friday evenings, an extra night every other week, small, earned. He bought them each a bookshelf from the thrift store on Monroe and put them together himself, which Renee said was apparently the first time he had assembled furniture without calling someone to help. I do not know if that is true, but I hope it is. My mother has not called. She sent a text on Christmas that said she loved me and hoped I was well. No apology, no acknowledgement. I replied that I loved her too. That was all. My father sent me a photograph in the first week of the new year. No message, just a photo of a wooden end table he had built in the garage. Clean joints, dark stain, 2 clean shelves. He used to build things when I was young. I had forgotten that about him. I have his hands. My sister's hands. I saved the photo. Aunt Gloria invited me to lunch 2 weeks ago. First time a family member had reached out on their own in years. She asked how I was doing and listened to the actual answer. That was not nothing. Carolyn brought me a jar of peach preserves from a batch she made last fall. We sat on my porch for an hour talking about nothing in particular, the way good neighbors do. I used to think that being strong meant being useful, that if I stayed capable enough, steady enough, uncomplaining enough, they would eventually look at me the way I needed to be seen. I bent myself into whatever shape the situation required. I made myself smaller at every table where there wasn't quite enough room. They never saw it. What they saw was a resource, a backup, a 3-bedroom property with one occupant who would get over it, because she always did. I stopped getting over it, and I started being honest about what I saw. I cannot tell you everything is repaired. It isn't. My mother and I are in a careful, deliberate distance. My father and I are somewhere between strangers and something older and harder to name. Derek and I exchange polite texts on holidays, careful and brief. 2 people who grew up in the same house and are only now figuring out what that means. But I am in my house, with my locks on my doors and my footage backed up in 3 places, and a camera blinking its quiet blue light above the front porch. The door is locked. It is always locked now. That used to mean something sad to me. Now it just means I am the one who decides who gets through it. If your family is asking you to make yourself smaller so someone else can expand, that is not love. That is logistics. And you are not a resource to be allocated. This is my table, my breakfast, my quiet Sunday morning. This is my house. That is the part of the story I am ready to tell. If you made it here, you know what this feels like. The weight of being the strong one used against you. The moment you decide, it stops there. I have one question for you. What is the thing your family took for granted about you for the longest time? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if someone in your life needs to hear this story, send it to them. Not because I told you to, because you know who needs it. Thank you for being here.